Thank you so much for tuning in. This is the Audaciously Me podcast with Winnie Elizabeth. I am very excited today because I am joined here by someone very special to me. She's been in my life for eight plus years. I've lost count, but she's been in my life for multiple seasons, for various events, and helped me to grow into who I am today. And that is my amazing therapist, who I fight for her time every time I put her on blast, to my friends, loved ones, all the things. But this is Mrs. Richelle Shorter.
Hello, hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here with you. I am Richelle Shorter. I am the CEO and owner of Restore Counseling and Wellness Services. The therapeutic side of Restore provides individual, couples, and family therapy. And on the wellness side of Restore, I provide coaching services for individuals who are otherwise emotionally and mentally healthy, but looking to advance in career, unlock potential, unlock strengths, and maybe navigating some life's challenges. And an organizational wellness component as well to Restore. And that looks like going in and creating programming that addresses the ecosystems of organizations to provide support and care for their employees so that we have individuals who are mentally and emotionally well so that we're able to retain and sustain employees and business.
Yeah, so y'all heard that. So that's exactly why I have her here, why I have her locked into my life, and why I am locking her into my calendar after this podcast episode goes up because she can help you in so many various ways. The organizational wellness is definitely new for me. So I'm going to keep that in my back pocket because that has been a goal of mine as a businesswoman is to be able to provide therapeutic services to staff. So I think that that's just great. I always brag and call her my unbiased homegirl because that's how we can have easy breezy conversation during our therapy sessions. So yeah, let's get into it.
That's
Obviously, for those that know me, know that I have a lot of audacity. I've had a lot of audacity probably for most of my life. But what I'm proud of, my humble brag, is that I've been able to use that level of the audacity and shift that energy towards something positive, whether if it's to go after dreams or goals, or how I love on others and how I have the audacity to love on myself. And that's something that I've been learning with my therapist, is to, one thing that she always tells me is to keep myself at the front of every equation. And so I want to share, just that access of resource with everyone tuning in. We know that therapy can be somewhat, sometimes it can seem as a luxury to some people. Unfortunately, some people can't afford it. And other times, there's just a gap that there's a bridge that's kind of hard to cross over and having comfort, with reaching out to a therapist. So I want this to be a safe space, just to kind of address those things. So as I told you recently, Rochelle, that anytime I share about an experience with you, I always call you my unbiased homegirl. Um, and I always say that because I could tell you some of the craziest things, either how I feel about something or how something affected me. And you'll never judge. And so, I just want to say thank you, for that. And with that being said, I did want to ask you, like, what led you into going into practicing therapy?
yeah. So for me, part of why I started therapy and opened my own practice, Restore Counseling and Wellness Services, is for representation, right? So, one of the things that we find most commonly is the stigma around seeking mental health support. So, growing up, you don't go to a therapist for me, right? You crazy. Okay. Ain't nothing wrong with you. It was a lot of the what goes on in my house stays in my house mentality. And so it really created this culture of survival. And I got tired of surviving.
Mm,
Okay. So coming from one of those environments that was really laden with ain't nothing wrong with you, I
mhm,
learned how to tuck and go. So I learned how to survive in a space of dysfunction.
mm,
And it got heavy. It really got heavy. And I found myself repeating a lot of the same patterns that I had been accustomed to. And once, I started having children and having a family, I didn't want to do that any longer. It didn't feel comfortable any
mhm.
longer for me. So it was important for me to do the necessary work and make the changes so that I could be the best version of myself. So going into therapy was in therapy field was me giving others permission to do that as well, because sometimes we need the permission,
Yeah.
right? And so that was one of the main reasons why I went into therapy, and beyond going into therapy, opening up Restore so that we can have the vibe of, my unbiased girlfriend,
Mm,
right? There are things that we get to say to one another within our culture that we just understand,
yeah.
right? We don't have to explain it. And sometimes we need that space to just show up as who we are safely without feeling like I have to explain what this means or
Mhm.
filter what I'm saying because of you not understanding what that means so that we can really get to the nitty gritty.
And see, and I'm glad that you say that because that's actually how I found you. So I don't know if I ever told you this, but I saw a therapist. Well, my very first encounter with a therapist is when I think I was 14 or 15 years old, and I'm sure I was putting my mama through the ringer, I was a teenage girl. At the time, I think I was still in Normandy or transitioning from Normandy to going to school in Parkway, which was a huge culture shock for me. And my mom wanted me to talk to someone, and so she took me to someone she worked with and that works well for her. So that's like a key piece, right? It's like, you some therapists work for some people and they may not work for you or for others. And I learned that at an early age, but she took me to talk to someone she was familiar with, and it just so happened to be a middle aged white woman. And I just did not connect with her. And I'm not, saying that she couldn't have served me well, but for who I was at the time, I didn't even know who I was. I'm this teenage black girl who's currently shifting back and forth and trying to figure out where am I in life, what is going on, what's happening. And I think shortly after that, I became pregnant with Sydney. So there was just a lot of things happening, and I just honestly did not feel comfortable talking to her. I didn't think that she could relate to even me going through that culture shock of moving from Normandy, which I still hold very close to my heart this day, and then moving into an area like Maryland Heights. It was just a complete culture shock. And so I'm glad that you said that we need someone who can understand so we don't have to waste time. We're paying you per hour and we get 1 hour. I don't want to spend the entire hour telling you what this means or what this area is known for, or or how I felt in certain situations. So I'm glad that you said that. And so yeah, I was a teenager then. Fast forward, Sydney and I survived a very traumatic experience. There was a tornado that touched down in Hazelwood in Missouri, and I never thought that anything like that would happen in my life. But I was literally just in my apartment on the second floor, which was the top floor of the building at the time. And I think it was around 7, 8 o'clock. So it was close to Sydney's bedtime at the time. And he was only in the second grade. So he was small. And long story short, I just hear sirens. The windows are shaking. Things are getting dark. And when I realized, okay, we need to take cover, we ran down the stairs. And then that's when I visually saw a tornado sweeping like in the middle of our complex. There was just like trash and leaves and things being swept up. And I was in total shock. And I always say, I never know if it was Sydney or God, but something pushed me down to the basement like, girl, okay, that's enough of looking. We got to get some shelter. But unfortunately, well, I don't want to say unfortunately, but what I didn't realize what would transpire after that is that I would have flashbacks of this tornado. So I would call my mom, and my mom didn't even live in St. Louis at the time. But I would call her and say, the clouds look funny. I think something's about to happen. And I would panic. Like I would get scared and I was just obsessed with the sky and with the clouds, and I think after so many times of me calling her or checking on my friends because I'm scared because I'm thinking another tornado is going to hit, my mom was like, "Winnie, you need to talk to somebody." And I'd never seen a therapist before, and I didn't even know what to do. And I think I don't know if it was her or a friend of mine, but somehow I learned that UMSU in St. Louis had a graduate program where it was affordable therapy care, essentially, services for people who need it, and they would base it off of your income and but the thing that I appreciated about that process as a client is that I could call and say, this is what happened, and I need someone who can understand, how to help me process the situation. And so that initial therapist, she was a white woman, but she knew because I just survived a natural disaster, she knew what I needed. She also knew that this was my first time seeking a therapist voluntarily. So she gave me homework, like she gave me worksheets that broke things down to me, so I could understand what this conversation would consist of, and just kind of how to adapt to it. And that really helped me to be more confident in my emotions. And I think it really helped to set me up to be prepared, to meet Richelle, because I ended up meeting you further off. But going through that process with her just helped me first become more in tune with my emotions. Fast forward, it's what, 2015, 2014, 2015, something around there. Darren Seals, globally known activist, he unfortunately got killed, and around the time of him being in the community before he passed away, I spent a lot of time meeting with him and other community, activists and leaders and organizers on how we could come together to do some great things for St. Louis. And so once he got killed, in all honesty, I was scared. Like, I didn't know. I looked at the police completely different. I was already, on guard. But once you see somebody, it was just, I don't want to go into the graphics of it all, but how he passed away was just very traumatic. And I want to say it was like the very next week, I was leaving out to take Sydney to school, and there was a police officer sitting in front of my apartment complex. I took Sydney to school, and I came back, and that officer was still sitting there. And I think like once I walked in the house, he left. And so I couldn't tell you, he might have just been sitting there on a call. I don't know. But for me, how I perceived it, I thought he was watching me, and I was afraid and I was terrified. And I called my mom again, and I panicked, and she said, Winnie, I think it's time for you to revisit a therapist again. I'm not saying that your feelings are wrong or invalid, but you need to talk to somebody. So I appreciate my mom, because obviously she's a common thread in this, of me getting some additional help. But this time when I reached out to UMSL, it was completely different. I said, I need a Black woman, because right now in the climate of what's happening, I don't want to have to over explain who I am in order for someone to only understand 50% of how I feel. So I said, I need a Black woman. I need someone who's local, obviously, to St. Louis. I need someone, I'm grieving like in a social justice, type of way. So I need someone who is open to at least talking about that. And it will be a bonus point if they're a Christian, or if they at least have some type of spiritual belief that will align, and not combat my Christian beliefs. And I felt like whoever I talked to that day was like, okay, like check, check, check. Let me find the right person. And she recommended you. And I've been seeing Richelle ever since then. So, and I'm holding on to you tight. So after this episode goes out, I'm booking up appointments for the rest of the year to the top of the year, because I don't have time. But I don't know if I ever shared this story with you.
Well, that's something, right? So, yes, kudos to mom,
Yes.
right? Because again, that's that permission piece,
Yeah.
right? Um, and kudos to you, all
Thank
right? Because you know what can happen sometimes is we have one experience and then we kind of count it out,
you.
right? Or we feel like something of this magnitude has to be happening in order for us to seek support.
Mm.
right? You also gave yourself permission. So you heard mom, you recognized one, something is, dysregulated. You reached out to who you know to be safe, mom, right? She said it's time to go get some support, and you trusted yourself to do so.
Yeah.
Then you advocated for yourself. Okay, this is what I need.
Yeah.
Okay, and thankfully, the needs were able to be met. I
Yeah.
remember our first meeting. Remember our first meeting, and it was heavy.
Yeah.
It was heavy, right? It was this beautiful being sitting across from me that was heavy and broken.
Mm.
And it was layered and layered and layered. And so while the grief is what got you there in that instance, you did a lot of work to get up under everything that was even perpetuating that process. Right. And so, yeah, I didn't know all of the story. So to hear that and hear how you showed up for yourself during all of that, right? And not tucking and going, not um, choosing to walk in survival mode,
Yeah.
but rather get support. Yeah, that's very encouraging.
Yeah, thank you. And it makes me think about having the audacity to give ourselves permission, permission to feel, permission to explore what it would look like, to change some of these habits to get out of survival mode. And it's so hard because I think a lot of us, especially, those that can relate to growing up in a city like St. Louis. I love St. Louis, but you can see it. Like you can see it on a lot of us that we're operating in survival mode. It could be some of the most intelligent, some of the most impactful and powerful leaders, and we're all just trying to figure out how to survive. And so being in a space now where I know I have the luxury of, like, I've broken free from some of those things. It's still hard because I think that there's comfort, in leaning into survival mode because that's what, I've been used to.
Yes. And so moving outside of what's comfortable, that's where our growth and our opportunity is,
Mm,
right? And so, yeah, we get comfortable functioning in dysfunction, and
mm,
we know what we know. Okay.
yeah.
And so it's to your point, it's easier for me to go back to this space because I already know what that looks like. I don't know what that looks like.
Mm,
Right. And so I might tiptoe towards that, get so close and then double back. Okay. And so healing looks like I'm embracing the full journey and all of its uncomfortableness that's
mm,
going to come with it. Right. And it means that I'm going to have to trick up some things. So the things that I used to find comfort in, I have to be able to identify that, yeah, it was providing some form of comfort, but it was comfort to a place of trauma, a
mm,
place of dysfunction, right? A place of that has no resolve.
yeah.
Okay. And so I can't heal, but still be attached to that space. It won't be functional, right? It means that I have to understand that in order to elevate some of the conversations I used to find comfort in, I can no longer have those conversations because, again, they're not comforting in the way that serves and benefits my healing. So they're speaking to Winnie as who I was, not Winnie as to who I am and who I desire to be.
Yeah.
Right. And so I had to trust myself to go through that process, understanding that, yeah, it's going to be uncomfortable. And if
So,
there was a way for me to say, once we hit it, I would. But there really isn't, right? Because life is going life.
yeah.
So we get to one point, we're like, okay, we're riding this out. This feels good. And boom, something happens. We're like, what in the flip just happened, right? It's life. But
Hello?
we've equipped ourselves with these tools and support that we get to pull from. Not only that, we're more comfortable in who we are. So being able to talk to Winnie today, 9/7/2023, it's a totally different Winnie, right? From 8 years ago.
Yeah.
All right. So the confidence in knowing who you are and who you desire to be gets to propel you forward.
That's good, and that makes me think about actually a recent session that we had. Definitely snatched my edges in a good way, but I think I had already started pulling. I started making them a little loose for you because I was already having my own self-discovery. Um, but we recently had a session, and this is something that I've not made public. Um, but I, as a lot of people, I grieved recently of essentially losing like a friend, losing a loved one, but they did not pass away. We fell out. There was a disagreement that happened, and it's not the first time that that's happened for me. With people, but the way that it hurt was something a bit foreign, and I didn't understand why it hurt so bad until I really sat with it. And so essentially, my self discovery was that I had placed this person in my life as a familial role, possibly like even like a maternal role. And I held on really tight to that. And so when things didn't pan out how I expected, it felt like I lost them, like how you would cry at a funeral. And I realized that I've had that feeling before with friends that I look at as like a sister or a cousin or a brother. And I couldn't figure out, I'm like, is it me? Like, am I doing something wrong? What do I need to do better? And then that's when I realized when I really sat with it, I said I probably have put people in position in my life that they never asked for that role, and they maybe didn't deserve, to have a certain level of access in my life. Um, but I also had to really sit with like, but maybe I was trying to fill a void that I didn't even realize. And for full clarity, I do not have like a really large family. For those who don't know, I've never met my biological father, so I've been raised by my mother. My older brother has been like a father figure for me, and he still is sometimes, even though he gets on my nerves. But a lot of times I handpick like friends. So if it's a friend that I've had since high school, she my sister. If there's a friend that I've had in the last 10 years. They might be a sister, or they may be a cousin. And what I didn't realize what I had been doing is essentially building my own family for most of my life, probably since I was a kid, because my brother and my oldest brother passed away when I was in the second grade. And then my brother that's still living, we're 10 years apart. So by the time I was old enough to somewhat hang out with him, I don't know how much he would want to hang out with a younger sister, 10 years, younger, but he was going off to college. So when he was away at college, I was essentially an only child. So, millennials were like the last generation of kids that went outside and things like that. So when I hung out with kids in the neighborhood, that was my connection. That was me building like my village. And I would see, family on major holidays. So I would see them on Thanksgiving and Christmas and 4th of July, but as far as just going to grandma's house on a Sunday, I did not have that experience. A lot of times, because my mom worked a lot, I would go to a friend's house. So I would hang out with them, and then their grandma, like I was going to pick out a switch for somebody else grandma, to spank me. But that like it felt okay. Like that's what the village is for me. Like, and I'm still like, I think I still have some of those like old school values, because if I see somebody's child outside doing something crazy, I'm gonna go say, I'm saying something, and then I'll talk to your mama. Like, I'm okay. Now I know that's not how people normally operate now, but that's just what I'm used to. But that whole self discovery of like, dang, I really been building my own family. So when somebody who I've looked at 10, 15 years all of a sudden ghosts me, or we don't see eye to eye and we fall out, and then there's no more communication, it hurts, because it's one thing if me and my brother get into it. At the end of the day, I'm always going to be his sister, so we could fall out, but when I call you, like I'm still here, like we're still blood relative. But I can't guarantee, like, Rochelle, if I looked at you as my sister and you're not really obligated to pick up another phone call from me. That's how I've viewed it, and that's what's caused a lot of hurt over time. So I guess I just wanted to share that, because that has been something recent, as far as like a self-discovery, and if, we're talking about me just essentially reintroducing me learning myself, after having a baby and I got a kid going off to college himself soon. It's just been a lot of self-realization.
Yeah. So one of the biggest things that I heard you say was, um, I was trying to build my own family, right? And so attaching to an ideal.
Mm,
So I'm building a family, having not grown up in a family that's of a traditional nature, right? And so I had an ideal, I being you, right? Had an ideal of what family looks like. And
mm,
so I'm collecting along the way. You mine, you mine, you mine, you mine, right? Because the relationships, the parental relationships for me were broken. So having not met my father, who is the figure who teaches me how to receive safe love,
mhm,
that becomes a void. Having brokenness in the maternal relationship, which is the relationship that teaches me how to give safe love, I'm trying to figure this out.
mm,
All right. And so, yeah, I've been knowing so and so since I was 7. That's my best friend. What, what makes that person your best friend today? Right? Not that they can't be, but let's talk about what makes them functional in that relationship functional today.
yeah,
All right. I've been knowing this person since college. Great. What makes a relationship functional today? Always being able to identify how the relationship is serving you and how you're serving it. All right. And if it looks like I'm just kind of collecting as I go, then we got to talk about that.
mhm,
All
mhm,
right. Because what happens is when if something happens in those relationships, we take it very personally.
yeah,
It becomes about us. Right. So to your point, what did I do? It's got to be me, got to be me, got to be me. Could be. Absolutely could be. Let's talk about how you were showing up. Right.
mm,
What position did you put them in? Did they know they were there?
mhm, mhm,
Right.
mhm,
What's it mean to be your sister?
yeah,
Okay. Does being your sister mean that I got to answer your phone call all the time?
right,
Right. So, really being clear around how we need to show up for one another so that we give each other the chance to win.
mm,
Okay. And if I find that I'm collecting as I go because I'm attaching to this idea of family, then that becomes an opportunity for me to step back and do some work. Okay. Because again, I'm attaching to an ideal that I haven't yet defined. Right. I just know it feels good to collect as I go because this is my village.
mm,
Okay. However, if it's not serving a healthy purpose and you can't serve it a healthy purpose, then it's dysfunctional.
yeah,
All right. Friendships change because we change. We're
yeah,
not the same people we used to be. And so it's important to have those conversations with our girlfriends, our sister friends that say, hey, girl, hey, right? So when you think about what this year has looked like for you, what stood out? What was important for you, right? What are you connecting with these days? What do you want to pull forward so that I can get a chance to see, is there an opportunity for me here? Because
yeah,
you might still be my rah-rah friend, the one I could call at 3 a.m. and be like, let's ride, right? So you still on that? Yeah, I might not be on that right now. Or maybe I'm the rah-rah friend, right? And so you like, yeah, girl, I'm doing this, and that. And I can't equate. Don't mean I can't, I don't love you no more. Just mean I can't rock with you the same, right? But we get to talk about that.
yeah,
We oftentimes don't. So
yeah.
then when the dynamics of the friendships change and there's a loss, we grieve it. Okay. So going through that grieving process, even when it's not a physical loss, is very important. Very important.
So what do you say, because I've noticed it's been a common thread of people grieving like losing friends, as far as a lack of communication. So I've seen a common thread of friends being ghosted, so they're like, all of a sudden she just stopped answering my calls. All of a sudden I go on Facebook and they say add a friend, and I'm just like, what I do? What happened? So I guess what advice would you have in what we could do? Like if that were to happen, I'll just put myself out there. Like if that were to happen to me, what would you advise how to work through that? Like how to process ghosting?
Don't take it personally. Okay. That doesn't make it easy. Right. Sometimes I say things like it's easy. Doesn't make it easy.
Yeah.
But people get to show up as who they are.
Mm. Yeah. Say that again.
Okay. And so ghosting very well may look like I don't have the emotional capacity. I don't have the language. I
Mm.
might not have the emotional intelligence to have this type of conversation. So ghosting might be me protecting myself
Yeah.
because I don't want to jump in the ring. Right. And so I'm going to let you have that
Mm.
because if I believe there was an opportunity and I've tried to create an opportunity, I've tried to create an opportunity
Yeah.
for us to have a conversation and you're choosing to not, I'm going to let you have that because see, I love you enough for that.
Mm.
I love you enough for that. I don't know what this is that's happening, right? But what I want to be really intentional about not doing is saying this is a me thing. This person's doing this because of me, because I don't know that to be true.
Mhm.
What I know is that maybe we had a disagreement, maybe we didn't, right? But what is true is that we don't have the language to move forward right now.
Mm.
And
That's
so I'm going to let them protect themselves and I'm going to protect myself. Now, by protecting myself, that don't mean, yep, I'm blocking them too. And yep, I'm unfriend. Because now we matching energy,
mm.
right? And we're matching energy that we don't know what's where that energy is pulsing from.
Yeah.
Again, it could be a space of protecting themselves, language, emotional intelligence, capacity. It could be all of it. Fear,
Mm. Mhm.
right? Them dealing with loss, how they grieve.
Yeah.
Okay. And so because I don't want to match something that I don't know, I'm gonna choose to protect my own head and heart space.
That's good. That makes me think of, and I thank you for that. That makes me think of, actually, I want to say it was like 2020. A longtime friend basically confessed to me why they distanced themselves from me, for a couple years. And I didn't realize. I knew I had gotten busy because like 2017, between 2017 and 2019 were very chaotic. Books and Bros had taken off. There were a lot of changes that happened business wise, which affected us personally. And then I'm still a mom, along with all of that. And I think Marlon and I, we met in 2019. So it's like, I didn't know he was going to be my husband, but I knew I liked spending time with him, around that time. So, but there were just a lot of changes happening fast, which pulled me away from people that I used to communicate with, on a regular basis, but the seasons were different. So when I communicated with this particular person, I was at a very difficult place in my life, and we could relate to that at the time. Like, it was like trauma bonding in a sense. So, I'm struggling with my business, she's struggling with her business at the same time, and we can talk about this struggle together and not judge one another. And it worked. And if there were ways that she could help me, she helped me, and if there were ways that I could help her, we worked through that together. But then when things started picking up for me and started getting busy, I was tunnel vision, and there was no intention of, neglecting her or leaving her behind or anything like that. The train started moving, and I was trying to keep up, and so that pulled away at me, and so, she ended up reaching out to me. I forget exactly how the conversation transpired, but she essentially opened up that, like, when it was hard, like, watching you kind of regain some success, for yourself, because I love you and I support you. But I was like, dang, like, can I have my friend too? Like, do I have to choose to support her just as a business owner, but I can't have those times like when we talked on a regular basis? And just going back to what you said about not having the language, I don't think that she had the language in real time to tell me, like, I miss you and I miss what we had, but I don't even want you to have what we had because you're doing good, So she didn't want me to still continue to have this like trauma bonding language, but at the same time it's like, but can I still get, access to you? And so I appreciated her for being honest with me, opening up, and I felt bad 'cause I'm like, "Dang, like, I didn't mean to make you feel that way." But I did appreciate her just for being honest with me and opening up in that regard. And the crazy thing is, in turn, I ended up being able to relate how she felt because I think we all have our own different tracks of plateaus in our journey, especially being friends with so many different entrepreneurs. So I'm like, I get it now because I got friends now. They trying to keep up with the train, and it may have made me feel away. But like you said, we can't take it personal. Sometimes people don't even mean to ghost. They're just trying to keep up with life because, like you said, life is always life. And so, you just made me think of that.
Yeah. And to your point, we can really appreciate her for sharing that.
Yeah.
Okay. Because she was grieving the
Hmm.
loss of her friendship as she knew it. And so she didn't know where she fit. Right. And so, yeah, I'm glad you're doing well. However, we connected in this space. Right. And
Yeah.
that's the connection that I know. So, relationships that have served a
Yeah.
purpose. Right. How do they get to serve us today? Having those conversations frequently with our friends is important, right? Because we're changing, we're evolving, we're these awesome beings. And we don't want to show up as who we were 10 years ago,
Yeah.
because then that's going to signify there's a problem, right? That we there's a concern for us to address.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're evolving. Ideally, our friendships are evolving. Sometimes they will not, and that is okay. Doesn't
Yeah.
mean I don't love you, right? It just means that you can't go on this with me,
Yeah.
right? Another part of that is sometimes we expect ourselves out of our friends.
Mm.
All right. So I've been that person who I'm always available. Whenever somebody call me,
I feel
whenever
like
I
you'll
need,
snatch my edges. I'm just
I'm gonna try not
my
to.
hat.
Just whenever
That's why I got my hat on today. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
just that whole whenever they need me, I'm there, right? I always answer no matter what. That's fine. That's perfect, right? If that's for you.
Mm,
But
mhm.
it is unfair to place that expectation on someone else, right? Because to your point, well, we weren't married yet, but we met, we were courting, right? We were learning how to be in a functional relationship, which takes a lot of work. Because that
Yeah.
means I got to step back and look at myself because I have a blueprint of relationships.
Mm, mm.
So I'm trying not to go back to that blueprint,
Yeah.
right? That means I had to do some work. So there are some things I'm focusing on, right? I'm a single mother, I'm growing a business, right? There's a lot of moving parts. Okay. So I'm not the same person.
Yeah.
Okay. So expecting me out of you wouldn't be fair, and expecting you out of me wouldn't be fair. Right. So we have to be really, really careful there to give people the grace to show up as who they are and be able to receive that fully, even when it doesn't match who we are. And again, if I've determined that you're never there when I need you, you're never there when I call, right? If there's an emergency, I cannot count on you. Then I got to do something there.
Mm, mhm, mhm, mhm.
Okay. So this is all about us. We really lean into outward projections. They. Tell me about what they did. I want to hear it. Okay. Now let's talk about you
Yeah.
because that's what we get to control.
Yeah, yeah, that part.
Hmm.
And that's a good point. So I brought this book that I've
Hmm.
been referring to lately. So it's called Jesus Calling, and it's a daily devotional. Um, I've tried to get back into the practice of actually opening it up and reading it on a daily basis, like you're supposed
Hmm.
to. Um,
Uh-huh.
and it's crazy because recently, like I knew that we would have this conversation today around, friendship and me discovering myself and all these things, but the crazy thing is recently, and this was the daily devotion for September 5th, which is just a few days ago. Um, but it says, I am your best friend as well as your king. Walk hand in hand with me through your life. Together, we will face whatever each day brings pleasures, hardships, adventures, disappointments. Nothing is wasted when it is shared with me. I can bring beauty out of the ashes of lost dreams. I can glean joy out of sorrow. peace out of adversity. Only a friend who is also the King of Kings could accomplish this divine alchemy. There is no other like me. The friendship I offer you is practical and down to earth, yet it is saturated with the heavenly glory. Living in my presence means living in two realms simultaneously, the visible world and unseen eternal reality. I have equipped you to stay conscious of me while walking along dusty, earthbound paths. And that just like really stuck with me because I always tell people I've throughout my life, my mom always instilled like a foundation of faith, but I wasn't necessarily forced to like go to church. We did have options of church, that we could go to, but I wasn't raised. I don't have like the traditional, experience. I went to non-denominational churches and things of that nature. But the older that I got, I always tell people I started learning to love the God within me because God is within all of us. So like even reading this, it's like I am your best friend. So it's more of like seeking like what is in you. And how do you explore that and be content with yourself. So I wanted to share that because it really stuck with me, especially with this conversation.
Yeah. Um, he's the blueprint.
That part.
He's the blueprint, right? Nothing that we experience is new.
Mm,
Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to experience it. Okay. He had to overcome it in order for us to experience it. And so he showed us how to show up in relationships. He showed us what it looks like to have an anxious mind, to be weary, to have to disconnect, to pray and fast, to ask,
mm.
right? We hear a lot growing up, you don't ask God, you don't question God. I saw Jesus do it, right? Jesus said, if this is your will,
Yeah, yeah.
right, then your will be done. But he was showing us a display of weariness, right? And so we get to have all of these life human experiences because we have the blueprint,
Mhm.
right? Living and breathing in us every day. And Second Timothy 1:7 tells us that he didn't give us a spirit of fear,
Mm.
right? But of power, love, and a sound mind, right? Power, love, and a sound mind. He didn't say that you wouldn't have experiences of fear, right? Doubt, right? Confusion. However, you're equipped and it's living in you because he's giving you the spirit of
Yeah.
power, love, and a sound mind, right? So when we begin to connect in that space, um, there's a lot of freedom there, right? And it unlocks just so much potential. So kudos to you for giving yourself that time to meditate, that time to connect, and that time to build and foster your relationship on your terms.
Thank you. And I'm still working through it, obviously like even just with practices, because even picking up that book has helped me lately on how I start my day. So I know that's something that we've talked about various times in therapy, because sometimes I would get into the habit of just waking up when Arya starts fussing or waking up when the alarm goes off and then rushing out the bed and everything is just like a rush, rush, rush. But now like I've been able to, in a way, without even telling them, train my family, like on how we collectively start out our day that also works for me. So now that looks like, okay, Marwin's gonna get up, probably an hour earlier than me, and he'll wake up Sydney so they can get out the door by the time I need to get up. And so it's a little bit more peace in the house. It's not, four people getting ready, it's two people getting ready at different times, so by the time they're walking out the door, I'm getting up. I still get a good hour to myself before Aria, gets up and tells me what to do for the day, So, I get that hour to lean into reading a daily devotional or, reading something else or listening. This morning I listened to a couple Beyonce songs, to try to help me. I'm like, okay, like I'm that girl. So but it's giving me a little bit more freedom to kind of help recalibrate how my family starts the day.
And it started with who?
Me.
It started with you, right? And that was another self revelation for you. That was another growth moment because I want to be all things to all people,
Mm,
right? So I got to be up doing this. Well, hold on. Well, wait a minute, right? What
yeah.
about you? I
Yeah.
don't have time to do this because I got to do this. I got to do. Mm-mm,
Yeah, I'm
right?
learning. I'm
You're
learning.
doing. You're
I'm
doing.
doing. I'm doing. Yes, yes.
Right. And so it sounds like you've really employed that, and everybody else falls in line. Right.
Yeah.
It's a lot to carry everything on your shoulders by yourself, and you don't have to.
Mm,
Right. That whole you got to be strong. I don't subscribe to that being strong. Right. We're not super people. Right. We're not that's not who we are. We're humans, right?
yeah.
And so as humans, we have superpowers,
Mhm.
right? And we get to employ those from time to time. But if I'm walking around carrying everybody's weight and then mine,
Anybody got time?
ain't nobody got time for that, right? So I'm gonna move myself to the front because it starts with me.
Yeah.
And then I get to set the tone for what this looks like moving forward. And I get to set the tone for my day. If I wake up anxious, then I'm going to have an anxious day. I'm not going to have a restful night of sleep. And I'm going to do the same thing the next day and the next day and the next day. And so, how is that serving me a healthy purpose? It's not.
Yeah.
We get to slow this down and we get to be present. We get to breathe. We don't even breathe, because we're just holding our breaths, hitting the ground, going. And we
Yeah.
didn't forgot to just breathe. There's some birds outside. We ain't heard a bird. We ain't felt no wind. You know what I'm saying? We ain't really tasted our food. Just none of that, right? Because we're floating on autopilot.
I think that was a thing it was a funny revelation that happened when COVID first hit because I think so many of us were just so busy hustling, bustling, going to work and traveling and doing this and doing that. And then when those first 2 weeks, of shutdown that sat us down, we are like, wait, the birds a little loud, ain't they? Like where y'all come from? But it really forced us to tune into, like you said, just the meditative practices without even trying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. COVID, yeah, it forced us, right? And what also happened is COVID quieted the noise,
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
right? And that's important when we're healing because there's noise. We don't even understand the noise because we're so used to it. We've probably been dealing with noise for years and years. And so COVID didn't give us anything to do. So guess what? We can now hear the
Mm,
noise.
yeah.
Okay. We're not used to sitting with ourselves. So
Mhm.
what do I do with all of this anxious energy? Right. And then we're living in a pandemic. What
Yeah,
is this? None of us had experienced that piece before. I can't go to my family, my friends. I can't do the things that used to bring me comfort,
yeah,
right? And it's just this pulsing, it's getting louder and louder. And yeah, right? So COVID really forced us to sit with ourselves and start doing some work.
yeah. So I'm glad that you said that, especially regarding the noise, because now that well, I don't even want to say it's post-pandemic because COVID is going around again. So definitely try to stay safe out here. But um now like I struggle with balancing the COVID, world. So it's like doing things. I appreciate being able to access you virtually, but I don't want to have access to everybody virtually. So it's like now there's this balance of trying to keep up with work virtually, but also we're back in person. So balancing that with in-person life. So it's like sometimes I know I look crazy because I might be, in the Marwin driving and I'm in the matter of fact, Sydney had a Zoom call while I was driving. He had the laptop on his lap, handling, a meeting, which it was for a great opportunity. So I appreciate that. But like when you really sit and think of it, we look crazy. Like He's in the passenger seat conducting the whole meeting like nothing is wrong, just to go to something else in person to then also put on a different hat. So I guess I mention all that to say, like, in trying to navigate in these spaces, another service that Richelle offers is meditation, and meditative practices. So, what tips would you offer just as far as like navigating in these noisy, waters? What are some meditation, um, I guess, exercises that we can practice? I know I could definitely learn, just to kind of block out the noise myself.
Yeah. So couple of things that we can start with is disconnecting, right? And that becomes challenging, right, in the world of social media, in the world of electronics and connection at the palm of my hands. And us feeling like when that phone rings, we got to answer it, and that text goes up, we have to respond. Ooh, who doing what? The whole scrolling dynamic. There isn't a space for disconnection. So
Mm,
giving yourself permission to disconnect because all of that is noise.
it is.
Okay. And it's just noise over more noise. So when I'm able to disconnect and say, you know what, I'm not picking up my phone till 8 a.m.
Yeah.
Right. I'm gonna give myself some time.
Putting my phone on the other side.
I'm gonna give myself some time to just be, right? Whether it's praying, whether stretching, right? Because we've been asleep for 6, 8, 10 hours, right? So just giving myself an opportunity to open up and start allowing movement in my body so I can start really connecting to self.
Yeah.
That would be a really great start, right? Getting outside. Because we are in this virtual world, we spend a lot of time within our four walls,
Mhm.
right? And we are accessible. So whether it's Zoom, whether it's on our phones, again, we are accessible. Okay. So we might work, sleep, entertain, everything all in the same space. So it's important to step outside of
Yeah.
your four walls, okay, without your phone.
Yeah.
So sometimes I hear, Richelle, it's cold outside. We got coats, we got hats, we got scarves, because quite honestly, I want you to go out there where you can get a breeze because you're going to feel that. Your body's going to respond to that.
Mhm.
Okay. So as opposed to making excuses for why we can't, we give ourselves permission to. So what is the opportunity in me just leaving my phone here and going for a quick walk,
Yeah.
going to sit on my porch, working from my deck or my patio if I'm able to do that, opening up windows so I can get some fresh air, disconnecting from social media, disconnecting from my phone. Apple has these nifty, diffy. I made that up. You know, I be making the words these nifty, I call them protections that we get to use on our phone, right? Do not disturb,
Oh, yeah.
right? Block if you need to,
Mhm.
okay? Without being concerned on what the response is on the other end, because you don't get to control that anyway, right? This is about you. So if
Yeah.
I need this time for me, I'm going to create this time for me.
Yeah.
Meditation, okay? I've heard Richelle, I was like 2 minutes in, I had to go to the bathroom. Go to the bathroom. It's
Yeah.
okay. You know what I'm saying? Meditation takes time to build up to it, but give yourself credit for those 2 minutes that you
Yeah,
were able to sit there, right? Because sitting still is hard to do,
it is.
even as adults. We think of that as being a little kiddo thing, right? No, as adults, we're always moving,
Mhm.
right? We're always moving because we feel like we need to busy ourselves. And
Mm.
so to slow down and really give yourself permission to ground and connect with you means you got to quiet the noise.
Yeah. Yeah. That
Okay.
makes
And
me
when you quiet the noise, you're going to hear some other things.
Yeah. No,
And
and
that's
that's
what we need to get to, right?
yeah.
Go ahead.
That's like connecting, with a guy that makes me think about, I didn't realize, so we live like in an apartment community or whatever. And the apartment, like where we live, is nice, but being in an apartment, you don't have like a backyard or things like that. And I didn't really think anything of it. I'm like, Arya's small, she don't need too much. But it didn't dawn on me until I think we went to a park or something, and babies love to take their shoes off. So she took her shoes off, and she stepped on the grass and her whole face lit up like, "Oh, like, this is spiky," like, this feel the texture, like, I could just see it in her face, like, she was trying to figure out what was going on, and then she reached down to, like, feel it with her hands, and that's when it hit me. I said, "This baby ain't never stepped foot, on the grass, especially barefoot," because when we're going in and out, it's just in and out. It's to the car, to the door, and so I still have to remind myself to do that, to get grounded. Just go put my feet in some grass. And so you made me think of that. And I think that that could be, an additive to getting outside. I recently told a family member that she was, frustrated and feeling some depression and anxiety. And I asked her, when was the last time you've been outside? Like, even if I'm not saying go run or, anything like that, but just like, when is the last time you've gotten some sunlight? And also, like, I'm learning to do better with taking my vitamins because I've noticed when I don't take my vitamins, I am not okay. And it's weird because you can't necessarily dictate how you'll feel without taking the vitamins, but I know overall I'm not okay. So it may be one day I could probably feel a little off kilter, like, okay, maybe I need to sit down, or I might just be irritable or sluggish. And that doesn't help me at all, not as a mother, not as a wife, not as a businesswoman. So I've tried to do better about not only taking my vitamins, but then that's also become a practice for the family. I'm handing out vitamins to everybody, so but you definitely just made me think of that. So I do appreciate that. So to recap, we got disconnect from the phones, right? Stay out, well, not stay off, but take a break from social media. In addition to that, getting outside. Is there
Mhm.
anything I missed just as far as like the top tips to drowning or blocking out that noise?
Yeah, so organizing your day differently. So how I'm easing into my day.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not jumping out the bed and I'm on, I got my phone in my hand, I'm checking my emails. Nope, right? I'm getting up, I'm drinking my water. Water is vital. Okay, it's something we skip, but water wakes up everything for us and
Hmm.
it fuels us. So we need water.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can just keep everything flowing. So drinking my water, doing things that feel good to and for me. So
Yeah.
moving me to the front of my equation.
Mm,
Okay, so that I'm understanding it starts with me. So the more opportunities I give to myself, the better I'm able to show up as my best self.
yeah. Yeah. No, that's good. I appreciate that. I do appreciate you, definitely joining me today as this is like a new-ish venture. So you're my very first guest, and I just want to thank you. I felt like I was sharing with a friend, about approaching, this episode, and I said if I'm going to talk about taking care of me and rediscovering me and how important just like self-care is and therapy, I would be it makes sense to have, a relationship like the one that I have with you to be a part of the conversation because you've seen me go through so many different seasons, of my life. And you're helping me, even navigate through some new seasons now. So I just want to say thank you. And I guess I'll share you with, some other folks, but
I appreciate you and I'm honored to have been your first guest, right? I'm excited about this journey, what it's going to do for you, right? And how it's going to impact others.
yeah.
So go get it. Go get it. Go get it. Go get it.
Thank
Go.
you. So, for
Get it.
those who want to block off your time and compete with me for a therapy session, because that's what it's about to be, just let the people know where to find you and anything else that you want to announce.
Yeah, so I am Restore Counseling and Wellness Services on every platform. I'm just now getting on this Threads. Is that what it
Okay.
is? Is
Yes.
Threads? Okay.
Mhm.
All right. Look, I'm like, is that Threads that I just signed up for? So yeah, you can find me on the various social media platforms. You can reach me at 314-390-8703. Um, I provide individual, couples, and family therapy. And the wellness side of Restore provides coaching services for individuals who are otherwise mentally and emotionally healthy, but looking to unlock potential, identify strengths, and just navigate life's challenges, you'll find my coaching services on that side of my practice. And I also provide organizational wellness consulting. So that is going into organizations and developing programming that supports the whole ecosystem. So when we have healthy employees mentally and emotionally, then we are better apt, to have sustainability and retainability, right? So that's what those offer, products offer, right? Services offer. On that side, yeah. So that's it. That's me, Richelle Shorter, with Restore Counseling and Wellness Services.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, and thank you for joining me today. Wasn't that good? So I'm so glad that Rochelle made the time to come out and to speak, and to be a guest host. Um yeah, I just can't even find the words. Hmm. Mm, 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 mm. Okay. So, one common question that I'm going to answer myself, but then also ask any of my guests, and you can feel free to send in your response as well. But with this being the Audaciously Me podcast, I want to share, like when did I initially find my audacity? So, a little, I guess, exclusive tidbit because I've shared it to a certain extent, but not widely around social media. When I mentioned in talking to Rochelle that I have never met my biological father, that still holds true to this day. When I was younger, every now and then I would talk to him on the phone. I don't know what I thought in my mind. I think I probably thought he was in the military or something. I don't know. I've always had a very vivid imagination. But I think whatever picture that I painted was a fantasy, and I don't want to like dampen the mood, but now that I think about it, it was so sad because it would get to the point to where um I started looking for him. So like the mailman would come up and I'm like, is that my dad? Or the delivery man would come, is that my dad? Or like somebody coming, they charter, they would try to sell door to door cable. Do they look like my dad? And it was just me really trying to find connection. And then unfortunately I went through a traumatizing time in my childhood where I'll respect her privacy and not tell the full story, but I just had to go stay with some family friends temporarily. And after so long of staying with them, I got tired of them. I wanted my mama. And I was crying one day. I think I was in the third grade. I was crying and I was like, I want my mom, I want my mom. And they're like, well, you can't go home to your mom. And then so the next person that you naturally go to, I start crying and saying, I want my dad, I want my dad. And the particular person I was staying with, I guess she was upset too, because then she said, well, why would you want somebody who tried to kill you? And I said, what? I was in the third grade, y'all, when she said this to me. And that's when I found out that my father had been in jail uh, since I was born because he allegedly he sent a hitman to unalive my mother and myself when she was pregnant with me. So I was really angry when I found that out, and I was in the third grade when I found this out, and I was so angry and I was so hurt. And I remember when I talked to my mom about it, obviously it pissed her off, like she was upset that that conversation even made it to me, especially in that way. Um, but the thing that I will never forget, and I'm like getting a pit in my stomach thinking about this, but the thing that I will never let go of is that in a moment where the enemy tried to make me tap into a level of anger that I didn't even fully understand, that's actually when I found my purpose. Um, I was in the third grade, and I vividly remember I got so angry. I ran, when I ended up seeing my mom and I told her, and she was upset, and I ran to the car and I just sat in the car, and I think I punched the front seat because I'm sitting in the back seat. I punched the front seat and I'm like, I hate him, I hate him, I hate him. I want to kill him. And I was just so angry. And I let those feelings out. And then I sat there and I said, but you know what? You ain't win because me and my mama's still here. So if me and my mama's still here, then that means that we're here for a purpose. That means that we're here for a reason. I don't know what it is, but I'm here for something great. And I realized that when I was in the third grade, and I've held on to that. I've held on to that fire. I've held on to that audacity ever since then. And I don't share that for like pity or for anyone to feel bad for me. Um, my mom is the strongest woman that I will ever know for going through that, and even just how she forgave through that season, even before I was born, and processed things. But I hold on to that because where did that audacity come from? You know what I'm saying? Like, how as a I don't know, what was I, 8, 9 years old, something like that? A child being like, you know what? Baby, if that didn't take me down, can't nothing take me down. So I just want to share that. It's a very intimate testimony of what God can do in the combination of audacity. So anyway, that concludes today's episode of Rediscovering Me on the Audaciously Me podcast with Winnie Elizabeth. If you have any audacious testimonies that you want to share, feedback, I am open to taking all of your feedback. You can email me at audaciouslyme by Winnie at gmail.com. You will find the email address in the comments. And thank you so much for tuning in. Peace.